everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If I were on Abby Lee Miller's Ultimate Dance Competition, I would be heading home because today has not been my day. I don't know if anybody is gonna get that reference, but it's in the video now. Today I am filming my September reading wrap-up. I did not have a fantastic reading month in the month of September in terms of quantity. In terms of quality, things were pretty good. But a lot was happening in September. I moved, I started school, I was just generally exhausted the whole time, so reading kind of took the back seat most of the time. The one good thing about not reading very much and only reading when I wanted to be reading was I did, like I said, enjoy pretty much every book that I read. Not even pretty much, I did genuinely enjoy every book that I read. I gave every book 4 stars and above, so if you want to see me rip into some books, not this time, definitely next month or the month after that. It's pretty rare for me to like every book that I've read in a month. And we're just gonna go ahead and start with a book that only kind of counts. It's not counting in my yearly reading goal because it is a reread, but it is Book of a Thousand Days by Shannon Hale, my favorite book of all time. I first read this book when I was probably 11, and I reread it every year at least, sometimes 2-3 times a year. I love this book. This book invented being underrated. This book invented wholesome romance. This book invented frustrating yet rewarding character arcs. This book has done it all. What is it about, for those of you who don't know? Because it seems like almost nobody does know. I have heard nobody gush about this book. I have seen it nowhere on BookTube. I know that it's from 2007, so maybe back in the day people were talking about it on YouTube. But because I haven't seen it, I'm just going to assume nobody's ever talked about it. If somebody were to pitch this book to me, I probably, in this day and age, would say that I wouldn't be interested in reading it because it doesn't really have anything that I really look for in a book. But because I read it for the first time when I was 11 and my standards were very different from what my standards are now, it all worked out. It was all good. It is set in a fictionalized, fantastical version of Mongolia, and it follows Dashti, who is a lady's maid who has agreed to spend 7 years locked up in a tower with her Lady Saren. Lady Saren, the girl that Dashti is going to be imprisoned with, she basically just told her dad she would not be going through with the arranged marriage that her father set up for her, which is a big no. And yeah, these two gal pals are sentenced to 7 years trapped in a tower. And if you're thinking that doesn't sound that interesting, you're wrong. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It is so beautifully written. Shannon Hale has such an amazing way of describing nature and the changes in weather, even when they're trapped in the tower. Dashti, by the way, this is written in her journal entries. She has such a wonderful way of describing the way the seasons are changing, and it's beautiful. It's such a delightful book to read, and I love it. I was in a mood where I didn't want to read at all, but when I started reading this, I read it all in one afternoon just because it's gorgeous and I love it. And yeah, 10 out of 10. Love this gal. This book is still an absolute stunner. I don't usually rate books that I'm doing a reread of, but if I were to rate it, it'd be a 5-star. This book has been with me for so many different personality changes, and it's maintained its 5-star status the entire time, so I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. And I kind of want to reread it now. I might do it. I might, and it'll still be 5 stars again. Oh, also there's pictures. I don't know if I mentioned that. Let me find you a picture. One that's not a spoiler, ideally. Oh, here's a page of pictures. Yeah, pictures. It's a beautiful book and everybody should read it. The next book I read was Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosgol. The library edition that I have is very beat up. I don't know if you can tell, but she's really been through the ringer. This is a YA graphic novel about a girl named Anya. Anya is a Russian immigrant. She's also a teenager with a capital T, super angsty, super conflicted about her identity, and while on her way to school, she trips and falls into a well. You can see that on the back cover of the book. There she is. She's falling, and look, in the well, there happens to be a skeleton skeleton. With this skeleton comes a ghost who introduces herself to Anya and basically decides that she's going to be Anya's companion, whether Anya likes it or not. Goodreads was being really annoying and not like telling me when I read this book, but I do know that I read it in like an hour, which is pretty typical with a graphic novel. I tend to fly through them pretty quickly, but it was a very enjoyable hour, I will say. There's a lot of discussions around identity and fitting in while also maintaining a connection to your own personal heritage, even if that heritage may exclude you from the rest of your peers. I've seen some criticisms for this book not being creepy enough for like the subject matter, which for me I kind of saw it as a coming of age story right from the get-go, but I will say I was creeped out at several points throughout the story. There was one scene in particular that I thought was very effective, and just in general this book made me realize something that I think I already did know, but it just kind of hit me more when I read this. I really love the high school setting for a graphic novel. I feel like a graphic novel is really suited to teenage protagonists just kind of in, I guess, their natural habitat. I just, for whatever reason, really enjoy reading from a high schooler's perspective in the context of a graphic novel, which isn't always the case. Like, I don't really find myself drawn to books about high school and books about like coming of age that often, but when it is in the form of a graphic novel, I can get down with that. So I may be on the lookout for more books like this in the future, because I really enjoyed this one, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up we have The Lost Man by Jane Harper. This book Goodreads did let me know when I read it. Thank you, Goodreads, for doing the bare minimum. I finished this on September 18th. This book was very hyped upon its release back in 2018, and it was actually the oldest book on my TBR, because I added it to my TBR when it came out in 2018, which, you know, it's been a minute since 2018. I would imagine most people probably know what it's about, but if you are not familiar, I'll fill you in. This book is set in the Australian outback, and we open the story with 2 brothers finding their middle brother dead. I should probably give a little bit more description than that. They find him dead of thirst, miles from home, but not very far from his car, which happened to be working perfectly and was full of food and water. There's no real evidence of foul play, but things just seem very fishy. The protagonist of this book is the oldest brother, Nathan Bright, but the book does look at kind of the entire Bright family as they're trying to come to terms and make sense of Cameron Bright's death. This book definitely has a slow start. Like, for the first several chapters, I wasn't super enticed to keep reading, but the further I got into it, the more impressed with it I became. It really effectively subverts a lot of the expectations for the thriller trope while still maintaining like a whodunit feel. Even though Cameron Bright's death is not explicitly a murder, and like you're not really sure if it can be classified as a murder for most of the book, because it just appears as though he died due to the elements, the author does such a good job of making everybody look so suspicious. I genuinely had like so many suspects, had no idea where it was gonna go, and I have to say I would have never guessed the ending, and to be honest, I don't think anybody can. There's a lot of thrillers out there where I'll read them and I'll think like, okay, didn't see that coming, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I probably should have. Like, it wasn't that big of like a twist, or like it wasn't that well hidden or like that clever, but this one genuinely, I don't know if anybody could guess it. If you have read this book and you did guess the ending, let me know. I did not see it coming and I thought it was really well done. My only gripe with this book is that I wish it had gone further with the protagonist, particularly with the whole idea of like the way the cycle of abuse works. If you've read this book, you know that the way that abuse affects family members is talked about a lot in this book, and it's particularly talked about in relation to Cameron, the brother that ends up dead, because the Bright brothers dealt with a very abusive father in their youth, and they talk about the effects of being raised in that abusive household a lot, like I said, with Cameron. But I felt like with the protagonist, Nathan, we never really like went anywhere with that, and it was just frustrating to see all of this conversation happening around Cameron and then just like crickets for the protagonist, who like it, which almost gave me a feeling of like, oh, was this protagonist supposed to be like too good to succumb to the cycle of abuse? That's not at all what the book is saying. It just kind of gave me that vibe. But all in all, 4 stars. I think it's a really good book, and I'm definitely looking forward to delving into more of Jane Harper's stuff, because I think that the way that she does thrillers is really, really compelling. And lastly, because I only read 3 new books this month, I read Warcross by Marie Lu. I finished this book on September 28th. This book follows coder turned bounty hunter Amika Chen, and she one day accidentally, or semi-accidentally hacks herself into a game of Warcross, which is this virtual reality game that literally everybody on Earth watches. After she hacks herself in, she gets a phone call from like the head honcho of the Warcross universe. He basically says, hey, I've got a job for you. Somebody is doing some messed up stuff in the Warcross games, and I have a suspicion that it is one of the actual players, and I need you to find out who it is, so I'm gonna enter you into the game, and you're gonna basically act as a spy. Little background, if you're not familiar with my channel, this is not the type of book I go for. I don't actually play any video games. I don't find virtual reality to be that interesting. However, I was in my day a Mary Lou stan. I really loved the Legend series back in middle school. I thought they were very fun books, and I thought that Mary Lou was very talented. So Mary Lou has always just been one of those authors where, like, even as I kind of feel distanced from her books because she primarily writes for teenagers, I still kind of get a feeling of just like, oh, you're doing so good and I wish you the best. I wasn't really expecting to ever read this book, but this month I was in a really big reading slump, and I happened to go to the library with the sole intent of picking up books that would help me get out of a reading slump, one of which was Anya's Ghost because it was a graphic novel, and I also selected this one because I was like, it's easy, it's YA, you know that you vibe with her writing style, or at least you did when you were in middle school, and also there's a competition element. You like books about competitions. This seems like something that'll really, you know, suck you in and get you out of that reading slump. And I will say, if you are in that position, I think that this is very much a book that can get you out of a reading slump. It very much feels like a you blink and you've read 100 pages type of a book. Like, I remember sitting down for the first time with this book and reading like 64 pages while my roommate was like making our grocery list. And we didn't have a long grocery list. So yeah, it's super easy to just inhale. I was feeling like it was a very solid 4 stars until like I hit the midpoint where they started getting into like training and I got a little disinterested. Plus, we started getting into, and this is a mild spoiler, but it's pretty quintessential YA, so it's not that much of a surprise. There is a romance, and I didn't vibe with the romance at all, mostly because right from the get-go, our main character, Amika, is kind of veering into Mary Sue territory, and like, I'm not one of those people that gets super like militant about Mary Sue's, but you know, if the shoe fits, it started to fit once this happened. Because Miss Amika does have rainbow colored hair. She is just kind of built different. She is like the best coder in the world, but like nobody actually knows because she was raised in an environment where she didn't really get the opportunity to get ahead and that sort of thing. So like, she definitely is giving off a little bit of like the Mary Sue vibe in the beginning, but like, I feel like she, for the most part, earns her place in the story along the way. Like, she is genuinely good at what she does, but as soon as like her idol started falling for her for like kind of no reason, I was just like, okay, all right. We're falling into some YA trope that I had personally parted ways with back in like 2015. Which, I mean, this book was published in 2017, so it's probably a fair assumption that this book was written in 2015, so like I probably shouldn't be mad. But yeah, my enjoyment level was definitely slipping more towards the 3-star territory. But the last third of the book really ramped things up, and I was really proud of Marie Lu for just pulling it out again. She is genuinely so good at what she does. I should probably explain what it actually did right instead of just saying she did a good job. Yeah, the end of this book just had some excellent twists. There was like some moral grayness going on. There was like social commentary on like technology. It really pulled out all the stops for the end. Once again, Mary Lu is fantastic at writing YA, and I am surprised to be saying this, but I do think I will pick up the sequel. So, yeah, we ended on a 4 stars for Warcross by Marie Lu. And those are the 4 books that I read this month. Thank you for coming along with me to see what little reading I was able to accomplish. Why do we need to be so loud? It's like 6 o'clock on a Thursday. I feel like I've done so little for this video. I need to like add a little bit more. I'm not really one to like share my TBR unless it's like something special, but I think I'm gonna read The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson next because I got it from the library. I may, you know, I'm all set up in my reading chair. I might just stick around here for a little bit. Wait, no, I have to do homework. And I do have some videos planned for the month of October, so hopefully I will see you again soon. But school has in fact started, so My promises, my word, they all mean nothing now. Who knows though, maybe I'll just quit my job. Anyways, thank you for watching the mediocre content I was able to put out today, and goodbye.